This is Stefan Lohrer, and the light's not incredibly good right here, so I'm going to slide around this way. He's from Caran. He was just at Wet Paint, and we're talking about pencils and different materials that are made by Caran, including pastels and neocolor crayons, the 1 and the 2, and graphite and stuff. What's it like to be, on the road, traveling around, introducing these materials to different people, different audiences?
It's a lot of fun because I meet a lot of artists. It's an excellent product, and it's a luxury to be able to sell a product that you can believe in. I know the family from Caran for many, many years. Like, we grew up together. In fact, the owner of Caran, his daughter Carola, who's the current president of Caran, actually took an internship with my dad when he was the importer of Caran. And now I'm working with Creative Art Materials as the new importer of Caran, and very nice people to work with, John and Karen Divis, the president and vice president, and wife and husband and wife. And it's a lot of fun. I learn a lot from the artists. I'll give you an example. Neocolor 2, which is our watercolor crayon, right, is used a lot for fabrics. People use it on cotton, linen, silk, wool, and things like that, and then they activate it with water. They put a piece of scrap cloth over it, iron it, heat set it to become permanent, like for fabric design, quilting, tapestries, things like that. Caran didn't make a pencil for those purposes. This was artists being artists and experimenting and sharing and being generous and sharing their information with us. A few months ago, I think it was last summer, I was in San Diego at Artists and Craftsmen, and the regional manager there, Tracy, told me that she does candle making, and she uses Neocolor 1, which is the non-water soluble version of Neocolor. She breaks off chunks of it and mixes it with beeswax and uses it to dye candles. And she used to have to use 3 pencils of another brand, crayons of another brand, to get one decent candle. And now she could just break off a little chunk, maybe about that big, what's left showing out of my hands, to dye one big candle. And so it's very rich pigments. But the point I'm trying to make is that here's another situation where I'm learning something from an artist that I can then share with all my customers.
Yeah.
So, and artists are a quirky bunch, and they're a lot of fun, and it's different like than if I was a computer salesman and had to deal with businessmen all day, which is fun too and different, but working with artists all the time, they're usually colorful individuals, creative types, and so it's a lot of fun to be with them and to ask them stuff, to learn from them, and to share that information, and so.
And I assume it's a two-way street. If you get feedback, you take it back to Caran and say, hey, here's a unique use, or some person had this critical feedback about something. How does that work?
Oh, sure. In fact, this technical product that I wrote.
That you wrote.
You're right. I wrote this, and our marketing guy, Mike Baker, he did all the graphics and prettied it up, and made it look professional. When if I would have written it, it would look like some mad professor was taking notes.
We get help with our stuff.
Absolutely. But absolutely. So we share that information. But here's the other thing, right? Caran doesn't basically make products and then decide that you need them. That's not how the system works. We have communication with artists all around the world, and they in turn, they tell us what they're frustrated with, what they'd like to see. And, we don't just want pats on the back or accolades. We want to know, if there's something that you're not happy with, that's sometimes more important. Because then we know what to work on and where to set our goals for the future. I'll give you an example, right? Caran and our chief chemist, Eric Vitus, is a very close friend of mine. Nicest guy you'll ever meet, really. And very funny guy, but brilliant. Brilliant young man, right? And so I do these seminars in different universities around the country, and it's basically in the classes, it's a materials class. And it teaches the kids what it is that they're working with. It teaches them about light fastness and pigments and water solubility and archival this and whatever. It's just, I try to make it not like an infomercial. So.
Right.
And so I told Eric that I was going to be doing a seminar at Sequential Art on Broughton, back when they've moved it now to another hall, but it was originally on Broughton Street in Savannah. And so
in Savannah.
Savannah College of Art and Design, SCAD.
Yeah.
And so I got two professors together in one classroom, Ray Goto's class and Dov McCart's class. And Eric had said, listen, when you go there, he's got a heavy French accent, when you go there, ask them what they would like, because we would love to make more for cartooning, because a bunch of people at Caran are real sequential art cartoon nerds, they really like that stuff.
Sure.
As do I, So they wanted to get involved in it. So he asked me to find out what it is they need. So I told him exactly, the same thing I'm telling you right now, is that we're very open to suggestions. And not to say that we're going to make everything that everybody wants.
Right.
That's impossible. But we are inspired by the artists, and we try to work off of feedback to develop products. And so what is it that you guys need in sequential art? And both of those guys said, non-photo pencils, they all suck.
These are
Their words, not mine. Right. And I'm like, what the heck is a non-photo pencil? I had no idea.
Right.
By the way, sorry, I meant to give you the news, not the weather. So anyway, so to explain what they are, for those of you that don't know, a non-photo pencil is a sketching pencil that if you're doing storyboards or cartooning, or even if you're designing a tattoo, you could do your rough drawing in the blue, and you make all your mistakes in the blue, you erase whatever you can, and then you make your mistakes with the blue, and then go over it with pen and ink or graphite. Then when you photocopy it or scan it, the blue doesn't show up, and only the finished product doesn't show up, so your mistakes don't show up. So essentially you don't, yes, it's like an insurance policy for drawing, right? And so I'm like, really? So what's wrong with the ones that are on the market? And like, well, first of all, most of them do show up to some extent when you work with them. Right. Or they're too waxy, so they'll resist the pen and ink, so it kind of defeats the point. And the other thing is they have an eraser that's like a pink eraser that really smears more pink in the paper than it takes blue off the paper. And so I'm like, all right. So I said, well, hold that thought. So I called up Eric Vitas on my cell phone, which was BlackBerry at the time, right? And I called him up, and I was, it was the first class in the morning. It was only 6 hours later in Europe, and so he was still in the workshop, and I was able to get him, and I said, hey, listen, Eric, you know what a non-photo blue pencil is? And he's like, yeah. And I go, so here's Ray and Dove are going to explain to you what qualities they would like in a non-photo blue pencil. And so they're talking on the phone in front of like 2 classrooms full of kids, right there in the class. And then they're like, okay, so they give me that phone, and I said, okay, and so we made a couple of arrangements. And then so I got off the phone. Then about a week after I got back from Savannah back to Clearwater, I was on the phone with Eric, and we were talking about what they wanted. And he started sending them different cores of different shades of blue, different hardnesses, different consistencies, and different formulas of blue. And after about a year and a half of testing at Sequential Art by all the professors there that wanted to get involved, they decided this was the best color and the best hardness. And so then we just decided, what racer that we wanted. We came up with that. Then Dov McCarg, one of those 2 original professors, did the artwork, and we figured it would be a nice little niche product.
Yeah.
And it ended up being one of our best sellers ever. And it was directly as a result of that. Another example is Luminance. Right? Luminance pencils. This is old packaging, and it's a beat up old road worn set that I use for demonstration. You could say it's relics, but it's actually
It's
used.
got a patina.
Yeah, right. It's actually been used, right? So here's the thing. The Color Pencil Society of America, CPSA, they went around and named it to all the different booth manufacturers of color pencils. They really wanted an archival color pencil because a lot of them sell their work for a lot of money, and they're quite artists with a lot of notoriety, and they were really concerned that their work lasts because they were concerned about what they were selling to their customers, that the investments their customers made in their art, that their work lasts. So they requested that everybody make light fast pencils, and what happened was most of the manufacturers took whatever current assortment that they had them tested by the ASTM, and let's say they had 120 colors and 20 of those colors passed. They took those 20 colors, rebranded them, and made it a light fast set. But what happened was those were the color palette made no sense, and other than being light fast, they weren't particularly great pencils. However, Caran, Eric and his team took it a little bit more seriously. They researched over 400 pigments. It took them 2 years to do that, and all kinds of different waxes. And they came out with an assortment of over 100 pencils that were rated ASTM level ASTM 6901, which is the American Standard for Light Fastness, which basically means it had to be exposed to 3 months direct sunlight in an Arizona desert by an independent lab, and 120 hours of direct sunlight under 400 hours. Excuse me, I'm wrong. 400 hours of direct sunlight of extremely high intensity UV lights of an independent lab in Florida. So 3 months of direct sunlight in Arizona desert, 400 hours of direct high intensity UV lights in an independent lab. That's how the ASTM testing is done. And so we had about 110, 120 colors that passed. And then we had a team of artists from all over the world come into one room in Geneva and literally fight over the colors. Not fist fight, but discuss passionately which colors they needed. We had portrait artists, landscape artists, and so forth, and, so that we had a well-balanced assortment of 76 colors. And consequently, this is the only one that ever really took, and that's still on the market and doing well. In fact, I was fortunate enough to be part of the team that was pulled in to do the testing for the pastel pencils. Again, here we had about well over 120 colors, of which we chose 84 colors that would be suited. And so we had, I don't remember, 15, 20 artists in the room from all around the world, from people from Japan, people from Europe, people from all over the place, and in the United States, and they decided, what was going to be the right assortment, and that's how we make all of our products. It's all done based on feedback, both positive and negative. And if we hear something negative, we try to see what we can do.
Yeah, of course. Well, let me ask you a couple other questions. So,
sure.
What's the best thing about working with Caran for you?
For me,
apart from the paycheck.
Apart from the paycheck, yeah, of course. Well, if the old adage that if you enjoy what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life, and that is to a large extent true with Caran. It's a family business. The Hübschers own the business. Lovely family. I've known them since I was a kid. The father, the patron of the business, Jacques Hübscher. I've known him since I was a teenager. Nicest guy you can imagine. Very humble, by the way. And Carola is, we grew up in the business together. So the people that we work with are just really nice people. The friendships that I have. We have a reunion, well, it's not really a reunion. Every year we meet at Frankfurt at the Paper World Show, which is a big show for art materials, stationery, paper products, pens, writing instruments. And Caran also makes extremely nice, fine writing instruments.
I own a couple of them.
Yeah, me too.
Pretty nice.
Yeah, brilliant. And you know what? Every pen they make, we make our own refills. For the Goliath refills, they're made in-house.
Right.
We get in pieces of billet and they come out pen. We're not having nothing subcontracted out.
Right.
And the same thing with our art materials. Everything's made under one roof in Geneva. No component is made anywhere else. Sure, the packaging, but I mean the products themselves, everything is manufactured in-house.
And they don't call it a factory.
No, we call it a workshop.
Right.
Because that's what it is.
Right. And there's craftspeople there.
Yeah. I mean, these guys have been, a lot of these guys have been there forever.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not a revolving door. It's a loyal company. It's a family business. But what I was getting back to, when we meet in Frankfurt every year, it's like a family reunion. You see each other. We go dancing or eating afterwards.
Yeah.
It's it's like.
Sure. They're friends.
They're real friends that I've had for, in some cases, since I was a teenager.
Yeah. What do you say?
And I'm 58. I'm no young man.
What do you say to people that come up and say, they just cost a few dollars more, or I gotta pay 70 cents more a pencil?
You're right. It's absolutely true. Look, here's the thing, right? If you're taking one drawing class and all you want is the credit, you're never going to draw again. You probably don't need a set of Caran pencils. But if art is your passion, in long words, it's less expensive. And it's not just Caran, it's any good art material. You know, if you're buying a good quality oil paint, you buy a tube of Old Holland, you're going to save money because you're going to cover so much more surface because of the quantity and the quality of the pigments that's in there. Or if you're using a golden acrylic or a Lasco acrylic, both two excellent products. Use that over some cheaper acrylic. In the long run, the golden or the Lasco is going to be way less expensive. Or Sennelier oil paints or their pastels. Very rich, and the same thing with Caran. Our pencils, in the long run, are going to be much less expensive than lesser brands, than any brand, really, because we use so much more pigments. We don't use fillers unless, like I explained earlier, unless that filler has a purpose to make that pencil better. Like we were talking about, if a certain pigment is maybe a little too translucent for our liking, we may add some titanium oxide to enhance the opacity of that particular color. So there's a reason for putting that pigment in there. That means that filler. It's not we're trying to cut the pigment. The whole purpose is, here's the thing. We try to make our products as concentrated as possible because we feel like you can always dilute them after the fact. Right? You can a lighter touch or dilute them with water or a solvent
It's
or
like a
whatever it is.
museum aquarelle pencil is like a tube of paint.
Right, exactly. But yet, if you look at it, it's very economical because what it is.
Well, your
the full
package-
retail would be, I don't know, $4.50, $4.70 a pencil, something like that. But you know, usually they're slightly discounted, and not heavily discounted, but slightly discounted. And you know, you can get probably about as much surface coverage as you can as like a half cake of watercolor. A half cake of watercolor is like $12.
It's expensive.
Yeah, and this is that quality of pigment. But it's much more versatile because you can draw with it. You can paint. You know, I can put this directly, like I showed earlier. You know, you can put this directly on a palette, right? And I could take a little water brush, right? There's a little water going out of here. There we go. Right? This is our travel brush, by the way. We can put these. And now, you see, you put this right on here. So you know, you could use it. I could use it dry, right? I can draw it dry. Then I can enhance it with a little water, you know. Or I could, you know, like I said, I could do straight up paint with it. I could darken it if I want, right? You know? So you can do, you know, you can work it just like a watercolor. You can lighten it. You can mix it with other water-soluble mediums. So it's very, very versatile. But
Have you found that urban sketchers are attracted to these types of pencil? They can not only use a pencil, but like it's a low barrier entry to somebody who wants to get into watercolor. For instance, they're afraid of watercolors. You could use a pencil because you like using pen. You're used to a pencil.
yeah, and it's a real easy way to get into it because you can control it a lot easier. You could lay it down on the paper first, and then, you know, in the beginning, just kind of enhance it with the brush a little bit as it's on the paper. And then as you get more experience and braver, you can go ahead and use a palette and things like that and blend it with other mediums. You could even blend it with water-soluble graphite and use it to tint graphite, which is all, you know, very popular right now. Tinting graphite is a new thing, and the thing is, when you buy tinted graphite, usually it's not a very good quality color in that graphite.
Right.
And so here now
you
can
tint it with a high quality paper.
Yeah, right. Now I'm tinting. Now I've got like absolutely the highest quality tinted graphite in the world. In fact, if you use this with our Caran graphite, which is, you know, a blend of Sri Lankan, Zimbabwean, German graphite, and Mount Marillenite clay, so it's ground 6 times, which is way more than the next best brand. And I can do that, and you know, I think one of my favorite things to do is you mix this with like a Prussian blue, right? Just a little bit of Prussian blue, and now you can get let me use this travel brush here, right here. This is another brush that's pretty good, and you can just really get like almost like an India ink kind of color out of it. You see that? Although I think I used that. I think I didn't. That's the Prussian blue. I think I used the I used the ultramarine, but it also works. You can see that totally looks like India ink.
Very good.
So if I'm doing a drawing and I want something to look like, if I'm doing a drawing of somebody who has a tattoo,
Yeah.
I can
You
get
can
that
replicate
color.
the color, yeah.
Yeah, I can get that color with a tinted graphite, and it looks, quite frankly, it looks different if you tint graphite than when you just tint like a black color pencil. It's a much grittier kind of look, which I like.
Right. Well, this has been an awesome conversation, Stefan. I
Well, thank you, Mark.
enjoy talking to you. I love the products, and this has been great. And I'm sure the viewers are going to love this. Any advice you have to like people who are starting out in the Caran line of products? Anything you can tell them about how to enter the market of Caran, where to go?
You mean as a retailer or as a
No,
or
just as an artist, as a consumer of the brand.
As a consumer,
Have you guys always done graphite pencils?
I would follow the same sequence of events as they teach you in art school. I would start with graphite. Start with the graphite. To get your values and things like that, and then take some color theory, learn how to blend some colors, and then you could get either museum. It depends on your budget. You can get the super color, which is less expensive. It's still a really excellent pencil.
It's very good quality.
Or you could use the museum, and here the museum is great, especially if you're studying color theory, because it does incorporate the Adolf Hölzel double primary system, where you've got the warm and cool blues, yellows, and magentas.
It'll
And
help you with your
Yeah, so now you're learning how to blend colors, which is probably the secondary thing that you would want after establishing your values and three dimensions and all that, things like that. So this would be a great thing. But if, like I said, you could start off with super color, and this certainly has the primary colors.
Right.
Then this has the double primary colors.
You have an important tip on these, though. I want users to know about, or viewers. You can glaze with these pencils, actually, just like you can a watercolor. Because once they're down,
Yeah, once they're down,
they're down.
They're down. That's the thing. It's a true watercolor,
Yes.
and it reacts like a tube watercolor as opposed to a cake watercolor.
so you can glaze with a pencil, a water-soluble watercolor pencil, which is just brilliant.
Yeah, you
And
can put this down, and it'll come back up if you work with a stiff brush and really work it.
Right.
And if it's before it's dry, while it's still wet, you can use a mop brush or anything like that.
Yeah.
Lift it right up easily, no problem. But once it's dry, it doesn't like to reactivate. And some pigments more than others, but for the most part, they're really, really permanent.
So
And
you can lay down layers.
Yeah, you can go over it with other wet mediums. If you're working with multimedia, you use this as an underpainting. And, the 76 colors, 69 of them have a 5 water-based mediums. Once you activate those water-soluble waxes, right, they soak into the paper, leaving the pigment exposed naked on the surface. And yet they're still 5-star IFS rating. That's unheard of.
That's pretty dang good.
Yeah. Hey, thank you
Thank
very much,
you,
Martin. I really
Stefan.
appreciate your time.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks a lot, and good luck.
Hey, thank you.
Happy travels.
Thanks.